Dwight D. Eisenhower, Shah of Iran, Debbie Reynolds, Eddie Fisher, Peter Lawford, Lucille Ball, Ronald Reagan, Lyndon Johnson, Frank Sinatra. All of these people have one thing in common. They all once owned a car called the Dual-Ghia, which was the production version of the Chrysler Firebomb concept car. But before getting into all of it, I'm Jay. Welcome to What It's Like, the automotive channel that talks about car brands that are no longer around. We also cover the classics, vintage, some exotics. We dive in deep on the history, specs, and design of these rolling works of art. This is our 360th episode, so if you're new to this channel and you dig this episode, there are 359 episodes just like this one. We also do engine episodes on Wednesday. If that sounds like a channel that would interest you, something that you will totally dig, subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it to never miss a video. This absolutely stunning, insanely rare, how rare? One of only 32 known to survive, is currently for sale at Hyman LTD in St. Louis, Missouri. Hyman specializes in selling rare and unusual cars that are exceptionally well presented. 200 plus cars in their inventory, ranging from a 1927 pure sang Bugatti, which is one of my all-time favorite cars, 1936 Chrysler Airflow, Delahaye's, Lagondas. There are really too many to list, all show quality. And I'm not talking take it to your local Tuesday night show. I'm talking like national shows, shows that you have to be invited to go to. For more information, pricing, and pictures for the Dual-Ghia, or to check out their stunning inventory, be sure to click the link below after the show. The Dual-Ghia story actually goes back to 1953, Chrysler Fire Arrow concept car. It's important to note that Chrysler made 4 distinctive Fire Arrows, 1 through 4. In the years 1953 through 1954, the Fire Arrow was designed by Luigi Segre. He went by Gigi for short, and Virgil Exner. The Fire Arrow was only supposed to be a concept car. Chrysler had no expectation of it ever being a production car. Fire Arrow was built by Ghia. All 4 of the Fire Arrow concept cars were stunning, to say the least. I will say the very first one was more or less a clay model and it never really moved. The other 3 did. There was also a 5th car called the Fire Bomb. It was also built by Ghia, and that is the car that laid the groundwork for the Dual-Ghia. The Fire Bomb was also a concept car, but it was also believed to be Chrysler's sporty competitor to go against the Thunderbird, Corvette, Nash Healey. Kaiser Darren was gone at that point, but in my opinion, the Fire Bomb is more in line with the Studebaker Golden Hawk, fast, and it doesn't compromise anything in the cabin, whereas the Corvette and the Thunderbird kind of sort of do. The Fire Bomb was more or less just a concept car. It never went into production, but there was a guy in the crowd by the name of Eugene Casserole, who was the owner of Auto Shippers Inc. in Detroit. Casserole hauled cars. He also raced cars, and he had another business that made tank haulers for the military. That business was called Dual Motors. Casserole saw the Fire Arrow for the very first time at the New York Auto Show. Casserole was in love with the design, and he knew Chrysler didn't have plans to build the car, but he thought it needed to be produced. So Casserole did the unthinkable and approached Chrysler about giving him the rights to build the car. And unbelievably, Chrysler said yes. But there were stipulations, like Casserole couldn't use any of the names like Fire Arrow or Fire Bomb. Casserole then approached Ghia in Italy, which was the same company that made the Chrysler concept cars, about making a small batch of cars. Casserole wanted to make 150 cars per year, but the actual production figure never came anywhere near that. Ghia accepted Casserole's offer. They also did revisions to the design, most of which were in the rear. So real quick, let's compare Firebomb on top, Dual-Ghia on bottom. Starting in the front, I apologize, I wasn't able to find the same exact image in the same exact angle. Bumpers and bumperettes, overriders are different. Also, the styling is more slab styling on the Dual-Ghia, whereas the Firebomb is rounder. The center grille on the Dual-Ghia also looks longer, but it could be this angle. Windshields are completely different. The Dual-Ghia has beautiful wraparound windshield and also has vent windows not found on the Firebomb. Moving to the side profile, the side trim is completely different between these two, with more pronounced beltline trim on the Firebomb. Also, the nose of the Firebomb curves down, whereas the Dual-Ghia is just straight. Just take a look at that. Bumpers on both curve around the car, but they're also different, front and rear. Dual-Ghia has beltline trim and trim above the rocker panel, as well as side scoop with trim not found on the Firebomb. Dual-Ghia also has fins that start just aft of the door with Ghia badge, whereas the Firebomb doesn't have any of that. Moving to the rear, there are only 3 things the rear design has that are similar. Everything else is different. Both are built by Ghia. Both have a center trunk deck lid line that goes down to the trunk button. Everything else is completely different. The rear end design of the Dual-Ghia is a knockout design in my opinion. It's one of the best looking designs of any 50s car. Notice the lack of chrome. The lines are just sculpted into the body. The more you move around this design, the more lines you see. It's absolutely incredible. The Firebomb doesn't really have that, but it has the beltline trim that continues around the rear section of the car. Single tail lights on the Firebomb versus single lights on the Dual-Ghia as well, but they're smaller, and they have reverse lights just below that. Moving inside, the interior is very similar in layout, but the big gauges, the speedometer and the tach, are flipped to the top on the Dual-Ghia, and a clock is added in the center. The switches in the center have also been revised. More slender radio in the center. Which one do you like better? Eugene Casserole would ship Dodge chassis from Detroit to Ghia in Italy, where they would put a hand-built body on the chassis. They also did the interiors, and then they would ship the car back to the States, where they would be fitted with electrics and Dodge running gear. It is believed that Casserole lost $2,000 on each car sold. They would end up calling the car Dual-Ghia for Casserole's dual motors and Ghia's partnership. Dual-Ghias were produced from 1956 to 1958. In 1958, there was a huge economic recession. That, coupled with the money lost on each one, they just couldn't go on. It's worth mentioning there was a rebirth of the Dual-Ghia, which Eugene Casserole wasn't part of. Ghia did it alone, but was able to keep the name and was produced from 1961 to 1964. Ghia wanted to make 50 units, and they only ended up making about half of that, 26 units total. They still use the Chrysler power plant, 6.4 liter V8. Let's talk specs. 203.5 inches long, 73.8 inches wide, 52.5 inches tall. It rides a wheelbase of 115 inches. It weighs 3,600 pounds. Price, $7,650, which is equivalent to you spending $83,585.37 in the year 2023. An absolute bargain for the car if you think about a couple things. This car is super exclusive. Production figures put it anywhere between 99 cars being produced from 1956 through 1958, plus 15 prototypes, which brings the number up to 114 units. I saw as high as 117 units because they didn't keep track of how many cars were being produced back then, frankly. But there's only 32 that are known to survive between the years of 1956 to 1958. So if your family bought one of these back in the day and you still have it, you're sitting in an absolute gold mine. Moving on to engines, so much conflicting information on this car, but I've narrowed it down to 2 engines. 315 cubic inch displacement polyhead V8 semi-Hemi, which is not the Hemi, 5.2 liters. It's good for 240 horsepower, 4,400 RPM, 316 pound-feet, or 420 Newton meters at 2,400 RPM. Bore of 3.6 inches in a stroke of 3.8 inches. When backed with a 2-speed power flight transmission, 0 to 60 could be had in 9.4 seconds. Theoretical top speed 107 miles per hour. Average fuel consumption 11.9 miles to the gallon. It will do the quarter mile in 17.9 seconds. The other engine option was the Hemi, 315 cubic inch displacement Hemi head V8 supplied by Dodge, 5.2 liters. It's good for 260 horsepower, 4,800 RPM, 330 pound-feet, or 447 Newton meters at 3,000 RPM. Bore is the same, 3.6 inches. Stroke 3.8 inches. Compression is 925/1 with cast iron block aluminum head when backed with a 2-speed power glide transmission. 0 to 60 could be had in 8.9 seconds. Theoretical top speed 120 miles per hour. Average fuel consumption 11 miles to the gallon. It will do the quarter in 17.1 seconds. It's also worth mentioning this car is all one piece, meaning the fenders, the body panels, they do not come off. So just keep that in mind. Let's talk styling. Just wow, look at everything that is going on with this design. Notice the headlights, how big those are. Notice the bezels are painted part back here and the bright work bezels there. I absolutely love the lines. Got horizontal lines behind vertical lines. This here. But just look at how this is raised. Just look at all of the different lines in the hood. This grille in the center is just iconic. When you see this coming down the road, not that you will, but there's no mistaking it for anything else. These bumper overriders or bumperettes, there's an ever so slight crease in the center. Notice how this bumper comes, it doesn't come to a point, it almost looks like a boomerang. Ghia badge here in the center. And down the side, just look at how this piece protrudes the rest of it. Just look at how far that sticks out. The wheels don't flare, but they're rolled. And this scoop here. Just look at all of the lines going to the base of the windshield. Windshield wipers have little pedestals. This car does have a cowl vent. Just look at how this windshield wraps around. Also check out these vent windows. Has translucent sun visors. Just look at that. They're almost like emerald green in color. Just look at where these fins start right here, and they got an aggressive the rear of this car is just as elegant as the front of the car. It also has this center line, just like in the front. It comes down here to the trunk release. Bumperettes and or overriders with the lights inside of them so you can see your license plate at night. Also check out the little exhaust tips, one on each side. These bumpers are gorgeous from the top down, as well as check out how this is all sculpted. Brake lights, reverse lights. Before getting inside, just look at how this door handle is designed. It has a keyhole on the driver's side. Beautiful Ghia badge here.
Look at how this door operates. Also notice the trim on the top. It's a pretty heavy door, all things considered. It's very nice material on the door itself. Up here, this feels like painted metal. Up here, it's a hard material, but this feels like leather right here. Armrest, as well as door handle to pull the door shut. Love this nice bright textured effect down here. It has map pockets in the doors and door handle to get out. This is the vent for the vent window, and it operates like that. Just check out the door seal and all of the textures going on with the door seal, and look at how bright and nice that is. Coming down inside the pedal box, the hood release is right here. Emergency brake, a light to tell you that the handbrake is in use. Brake, gas pedal, high beam switch. This looks like a pedal to activate the windshield washer.
That light green box, I believe, can be opened, and I think it's a vent. Air comes through the side scoop on the outside down at your feet. There is another one on the passenger side that is just like it.
Take a look at this interior. Back seats more or less for show, but you could store stuff back there.
On to the button switches and knobs. Starting on the left and moving right, speedometer with odometer. Also notice the 110 and 120 mile per hour are flipped so that you can see them. Also notice the reflection of numbers inside the bezel itself. Clock in the center, tack. Also notice the tack goes 5, 10, 15, 20 times 100. 4 smaller gauges on the bottom, 2 per side, amp meter, gasoline gauge, oil pressure, coolant temperature, ashtray at the top, key, headlights / panel lights, wipers, heater, temperature for cabin climate control, lighter, radio, window switches for both the driver and passenger side, cowl vent, drive modes read, reverse, neutral, drive, low.
This is what over the hood looks like. Here's what first person over the hood looks like. Got tons of space in between my lap and the steering wheel. Let's talk about these seats. These seats are super, super comfortable. Very, very plushy, especially in the center here. Nice seats. Look at the footwell situation. It's almost like you're in a cockpit. This transmission tunnel is huge, and it separates both sides of the car. Notice the pedals. There's a suspended brake pedal. The gas pedal, it might be suspended, but it's under the carpet, so can't tell. These are the window switches, driver's side, passenger side. Look at how this comes down, almost mimics a catwalk region off of 30s cars. It's pushed up here. That's where the engine sits. Just notice how far back the engine is. This is a polyhead Chrysler engine. Generator. Notice the power steering pumps on the back of the generator. The power brakes. Battery box is underneath that cover, and the horns are down below as well. This is the heater box.
This was a bucket list car for me, and I just want to say thank you to the Hyman Group for giving me a ride. This was an absolutely stunning car. This thing is absolutely incredible. It drives well, it rides well. The ride, it was floaty, but it wasn't overly floaty, and it soaked up the bumps with ease. And this car can haul some serious ass, and it looks good and sounded even better doing it. This car is absolutely incredible, and I can't thank the Hyman Group enough for the opportunity to do this. On the positive side, these were rare new, and they're even rarer now. Exclusive, one man's dream reality, a car with an incredible story from concept to production car, with cars being produced by the same company. Built solid, drivetrain parts are totally obtainable, excellent performance against it. Body parts are extinct. They are expensive to buy with only 32 left in the world. This is a car that I think even Jay Leno doesn't have. And to put it in perspective, I saw 6 Duesenbergs while at Hershey, most of which were Model J cars, you know, the supercharged cars. This is the only Dual-Ghia there. I've only seen 2 Dual-Ghias in my whole entire existence. The other one was when I was 16 years old at the Imperial Palace. I'm 34 now, so that's saying something. All right, now it's time for Would You Rather. 2 scenarios today. In the first scenario, would you rather have a 1955 Firebomb or 1957 Dual-Ghia or 1964 Dual-Ghia? Going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. Now it's time for the second scenario. 1954 Fire Arrow or 1957 Dual-Ghia or... Once again, going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. Now it's time for Name That Tune. First person to get both the name of the band and the song title correctly in the comment section will have your comment pinned to the top of it. Thank you all so much for coming out and watching this. If you'd like to get in touch with me, shoot me a comment in the comment section below, or check out our Facebook group that correlates with this YouTube channel. If you'd like to send me a message directly, send me an email, all of which will be linked in the description below. Just know that I appreciate all of your support. And until next time, toodaloo! This is, honest to God, one of my biggest pet peeves. This guy could have waited for the Dual-Ghia to go past him, but instead he pulled out in front of $500,000 car. It's a good thing the driver was paying attention to what was going on, and he proceeded to go as slow as possible. This isn't slowed down. This is how slow he actually went.